The concierge didn't even look up when Vera walked in. That was the first thing. Not the worst thing, but the first. She had taken the 7:15 train from Ottawa, the early one that still smells like floor wax and old coffee, and she'd arrived at the Alderton just past 9 in the morning with a carry-on bag and a jacket that had seen better winters. The lobby was the kind of place that made you feel the distance between yourself and the marble floor. High ceilings, brass fixtures, a flower arrangement the size of a small tree in the center of the room. The kind of hotel that didn't need to tell you it was expensive. It just waited for you to understand. Vera crossed the lobby alone. No assistant, no luggage cart trailing behind her. She wore dark trousers and a burgundy wool coat she'd had since her youngest was in secondary school. Still good, still warm, but not new. Her hair was pulled back simply. She carried her own bag on her right shoulder and a coffee cup from the train station in her left hand. The man at the front desk was named Timothy, according to his badge. He was young, mid-20s, with a fitted blazer and the kind of posture you rehearse. He was typing something when Vera approached, and he finished his sentence before he looked up. "One moment," he said, to his screen. Vera set her coffee cup down on the counter. She waited. Timothy looked up. His eyes moved over her once, quickly, the way people do when they think they're being subtle, and something shifted in his expression. Not rude, exactly. Just a particular kind of attentiveness that dimmed. "Checking in?" he said. "I have a reservation. Vera Ashbourne." He typed the name. His eyebrows moved barely. "I'm not seeing anything under that name. Try Ashbourne Theory." He typed again. A pause. "I do see something here, but—" He hesitated. "This reservation is under a corporate account. The Theory Group—" "Yes," Vera said. "That's correct. Is there someone from the company who made this booking on your behalf?" Vera looked at him steadily. "I made it myself." Timothy smiled in the way that people smile when they're managing a situation. "I just want to make sure we have everything in order. The corporate suite has some specific protocols, and we want to be sure." "I'd like my—" Vera said, quietly. Not unkindly. "Of course. I just need to verify." "What do you need to verify?" The question was calm, no edge to it, no raised voice. Just the question, clean and direct, sitting on the counter between them like something Timothy hadn't expected to be handed. He typed something else. Then he picked up the phone receiver and turned slightly away from her. Vera heard him say something low to someone on the other end, heard the words corporate guest and just confirming, and then a pause where someone on the other side was speaking. She sipped her coffee. She waited. He put the phone down. "I'm sorry for the wait. We'll get you sorted in just a moment, Miss Ashbourne," Vera said. "Yes, of course, my apologies." He handed her a key card, not the suite. It's a standard room on the 6th floor. Vera looked at the card. She looked at Timothy. "I booked the Hargrove suite. We're actually doing some light maintenance on that floor," he said. "We've arranged comparable accommodation on the 6th. Is the suite available?" A pause. "There may be a guest currently. Is it available?" Vera said again. "Or is it occupied?" Timothy's jaw tightened slightly. He typed. "It appears to be unoccupied at present, but we've—" "Then I'd like my suite," Vera said. "Please." There was a moment. Just a moment, a small, telling silence, where Timothy seemed to calculate something. Then he reached for a different key card, pressed it against the encoder, and slid it across the counter without further comment. Vera picked it up. "Thank you, Timothy." She walked to the elevator with her carry-on and her coffee, and nobody helped her with her bag. The Hargrove suite was on the 14th floor, corner-facing, with windows that looked out over the St. Lawrence corridor and the gray February sky sitting above the city like a held breath. It was a beautiful room. Vera had stayed in it twice before, both times with her husband, on their anniversary, when the hotel had still been called something else and the marble in the lobby had been darker. She put her bag down, stood at the window for a moment, and finished her coffee. Then she sat at the writing desk and opened her laptop. She had 3 meetings that afternoon, all virtual. A call with her legal team in Vancouver at 1 o'clock, a budget review with the Thierry Group's CFO at 3, and at 4:30, a conversation she'd been thinking about for 6 weeks with the board of a mid-sized hospitality company whose quarterly numbers had been declining in ways that were starting to attract the wrong kind of attention. The Thierry Group held a significant stake in that. The Thierry Group also, as of 14 months ago, held the management contract for the Alderton Hotel. Vera had not mentioned this to Timothy. She hadn't seen the need. The trouble with the restaurant started at noon. She came down for lunch, still in her wool coat because the suite had been cold when she arrived, and old buildings in February take time to warm. She chose a table near the window. Not the best table, just a quiet one, away from the entrance, and waited. The restaurant was called Crestwood, which was not the name Vera remembered. A rebranding from about 2 years ago. She'd seen the proposal in a quarterly report somewhere. The chairs were new. The menu was smaller. A server came over eventually. Young woman, professional enough, with a name tag that read Sabrina. She handed Vera a menu and said she'd be right back, and then was not right back for 11 minutes. Vera knew because she checked her watch twice. When Sabrina returned, a man had appeared at the host stand, mid-40s, restaurant manager by bearing, with the particular expression of someone who has spent years deciding who deserves which table. His name, Vera would learn later, was Dale. Dale was looking at her table. Sabrina took Vera's order, the soup, the smoked salmon plate, a pot of tea, and then walked back past the host's stand where Dale said something to her, quietly. Sabrina nodded. She didn't bring the tea. After 15 minutes, Dale walked over. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. "I'm Dale, the floor manager here at Crestwood. I wanted to let you know that this section is actually reserved for hotel guests dining on the concierge level." Vera looked at him. "I am a hotel guest, yes, of course. But the concierge-level guests have priority seating during peak hours." He smiled. It didn't reach anything. "I have a lovely table available just through here, near the bar. I'm dining here," Vera said. "I understand and I appreciate your patience. I ordered 15 minutes ago," Vera said. "My tea hasn't arrived, and I'd like to stay at this table." Dale maintained his smile with the discipline of a man who had trained for this. "I completely understand your frustration. Unfortunately, our policy during peak—" "What time does peak end?" "A beat." "Pardon? You said this is peak hour. What time does peak end?" Dale blinked. "Well, it varies, I see," Vera said. She folded her hands on the table. "Is this table reserved for a specific guest?" "We do reserve this section for—" "Is there a specific guest who has reserved this specific table for noon today?" The smile was getting harder to maintain. "Our policy is to keep this section available." "Dale," Vera said quietly, "I'd like my tea, please, and I'd like to finish my lunch at this table. After that, I have meetings until 6, and I won't need anything else from the restaurant today." She turned back to the window. Dale stood there for a moment. Then he walked away, and the tea arrived 4 minutes later, and Vera ate her soup alone while the section around her, the coveted concierge section, remained largely empty for the entirety of the lunch hour. She noticed that. She noticed a lot of things. The afternoon passed quietly. Her 1 o'clock went long. It always did, with the Vancouver team. And her 3 o'clock was dry in the way budget reviews always were, the CFO clicking through slides with the particular enthusiasm of a man who had given this presentation 11 times and was tired of all of it. Vera made 2 suggestions and 1 correction, and told him to reforecast Q3 with a more conservative acquisition assumption, and he said yes, and she said thank you, and the call ended at 3:48. She stood up from the desk and stretched. Outside, the sky had gone the color of old pewter, and there was snow starting to come down sideways off the river. She watched it for a moment, the way it moved against the glass, the way the city went soft underneath it. Her phone rang. Her daughter, Maya. "How's the hotel?" Maya asked. "Cold," Vera said. "They put me in the wrong room initially." "Of course they did. The restaurant tried to move me." Maya made a sound. "Of course they did. Did you say anything?" "I said I wanted my tea." Maya laughed, the short, affectionate laugh she'd had since she was 12. "One day you're going to actually say something, Mom." "I say things," Vera said. "You say quiet things. There's a difference." They talked for a while, about nothing much. Maya's job in Halifax, a minor renovation happening at the house in Ottawa, whether Vera was eating enough given she'd been traveling for 2 weeks straight. The ordinary things, the best things. When they hung up, Vera sat for a moment in the quiet of the suite, with the snow outside and the city muffled under it, and she thought about quiet things. She thought about the look on Timothy's face when he'd read the name on the reservation. She thought about Dale's careful smile and his policy and his peak hours. She thought about the 11 minutes without tea and the carry-on bag she'd carried herself across the lobby, and the way the morning had unfolded like something inevitable, small moments that added up to a message that no one ever said out loud. She wasn't a guest you greeted. She was a situation you managed. Vera had spent 30 years managing things herself. She knew what it looked like. The 4:30 call was the one that mattered. She opened it with small talk, which she was not naturally good at, but had become competent in the way you become competent at things you do often enough. The other 4 on the call were men, all of them senior, all of them from the hospitality company, whose name was Beckford and Associates, though Beckford himself had retired 12 years ago, and Associates had long since been replaced by a board that ran it like a sheet with rooms. Beckford and Associates operated 41 hotels across Canada. Mid-range, mostly. Business travelers, conference circuit, the kind of places that charged $94 for parking and called it amenities. The Thierry Group had acquired 18% of Beckford and Associates 2 years ago. The call was ostensibly about a management restructuring proposal. In practice, it was a conversation Vera had engineered over 6 weeks of smaller conversations, emails, introductions, a lunch in Toronto in November, about the direction of the company and who should be steering it. Vera listened more than she spoke for the first 20 minutes. She had always found that men in these conversations tended to fill silence generously, and that generosity was often informative. By the time she spoke at length, she knew 3 things she hadn't confirmed before. The chairman was more worried than his tone suggested. The CFO and the head of operations were not aligned, and there was a management candidate they'd identified who was, in Vera's assessment from 40 minutes of listening, exactly the wrong person. She said this last part carefully, with evidence and without drama. There was a silence on the call. Then the chairman said, "That's a significant position, Ms. Ashbourne. It's a significant company," Vera said. "We've been working with this candidate for—" "I know," Vera said. "I've seen the communication. I've also seen the operational data from the 3 properties he managed in 2023. And I think if you look at the staff retention figures alongside the guest satisfaction scores, you'll find a pattern that the top-line revenue numbers don't capture." Another silence. "I can send you the breakdown," Vera said. "Or we can walk through it now if you have 20 minutes. They had 20 minutes. At 6:15, she went back downstairs, not to the restaurant, to the lobby bar, which was smaller and darker, and smelled of cedar and old leather, the kind of place that felt built for one specific type of conversation. She ordered a glass of Riesling and sat at the far end of the bar where the light was low, and she opened the notes she'd taken during the call and went through them slowly. The bartender, a man about 60, unhurried, with the calm of someone who had been doing this long enough to find it interesting again, refilled her water without being asked and didn't try to make conversation. She appreciated that. At some point, another hotel employee appeared, not Timothy, someone older, a woman in a dark blazer with the posture of management. She spoke briefly to the bartender, glanced toward Vera, and then walked over. "Ms. Ashbourne," she said, "I'm Patricia, the duty manager this evening. I wanted to come and personally apologize for the experience you had at check-in this morning and in the restaurant at lunch." Vera looked at her. "How did you know about lunch?" Patricia paused. "Our guest relations coordinator spoke with Sabrina earlier this afternoon. We take our guests' experiences seriously, and I understand there was some confusion around your table." "There wasn't confusion," Vera said. "There was a decision." Patricia absorbed that. "You're absolutely right. That's a more accurate description, and I'm sorry for it. Mr. Hadley, our general manager, will be reaching out directly tomorrow morning. We'd like to make this right." "What's prompting this?" Vera said. "I didn't file a complaint." Patricia hesitated, in the small, honest way that people do when they're deciding whether to say the real thing. "We became aware this afternoon of the Thierry Group's connection to the hotel's management contract." She paused. "I won't pretend that didn't factor into this conversation." Vera looked at her for a moment. "That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me all day," Vera said. Patricia seemed uncertain whether this was a good thing. "Sit down, Patricia," Vera said. She gestured to the bar stool beside her. "I'm not going to file anything or escalate this to Mr. Hadley, but I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes if you're willing." Patricia sat. What Vera said to Patricia was this. She had been in hospitality and property management for 27 years, first as an operations analyst, then as a regional director. Then as the person who ran the acquisitions and strategy for a company that now had holdings in 6 provinces and 2 U.S. states, she had stayed in hundreds of hotels, business hotels, boutique hotels, resorts. Hotels that were struggling and hotels that were thriving. Hotels that were both. In all that time, she said, the single most reliable indicator of a hotel's operational health was not the revenue per available room. It was not the occupancy rate or the brand recognition or the food and beverage margins. It was what happened when an unremarkable-looking person walked into the lobby alone. That's your temperature strip, Vera said. The customer who doesn't look like money. The one who walks in with a carry-on instead of a rolling suitcase. The one who's wearing a coat from 4 winters ago. What happens to that guest in the first 10 minutes tells you almost everything you need to know about what's actually happening in your building. Patricia listened without interrupting. Your front desk is performing protocol and assessing customers at the same time, Vera said. Those 2 things are not the same job, and when you train people to do both simultaneously, the assessment always wins. Today it won the coin flip. Tomorrow it wins it with a different guest, and that guest tells 12 people, and 3 of those people cancel bookings. She paused. She finished her Riesling. I'm not angry, Vera said. I want to be clear about that. I'm not telling you this because I want an apology or a room upgrade or a complimentary breakfast tomorrow. I'm telling you because I've been looking at this property's guest satisfaction trends for 2 quarters, and I've been trying to understand whether the numbers reflect a training problem or a culture problem. Today gave me useful information. Patricia said quietly. Which is it? Vera considered the question seriously the way it deserved. I think it's a confidence problem, she said. Your staff are not bad people. Timothy is doing what he thinks good front desk work looks like. Dale is doing what he thinks floor management looks like. But somewhere in the training, or the management culture, or both, they learned that good service means reading the guest and calibrating accordingly. And the calibration is off. Not malicious. Off. Patricia nodded slowly. The fix isn't complicated, Vera said, but it requires someone senior enough to say clearly, we treat every guest as though they own the building, not because they might, because that is what service actually is. She set her glass down. I'll be in conversation with Mr. Hadley this week, she said. I'd suggest you mention this conversation to him before I do. Patricia stood. She looked as though she wanted to say several things and had settled on one. Thank you, Miss Ashbourne. Thank you for being honest with me, Vera said. It was, genuinely, the most useful part of my day. She had dinner sent up to the suite that night, room service, which arrived in 34 minutes and was exactly what she ordered, which she noted. Small things matter in both directions. She ate at the writing desk with her laptop open, not working, just with the glow of it. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city was clean and muffled under it, the lights reflecting up from the wet streets below, and the St. Lawrence somewhere beyond in the dark. She thought about what she'd told Patricia. She believed all of it. She had believed it for years, had built a career on the version of it that appeared in strategy documents and board presentations, translated into metrics and actionable items and governance frameworks. But it started here. It started with a woman in an old coat walking across a marble floor, and a young man at a desk who finished his sentence before he looked up. It started with what you decide a person is worth before they've said a word. Vera had made that decision herself over the years in boardrooms and acquisitions and due diligence processes. She had made the fast read, the gut assessment, the quiet calculation about what and who mattered. She was not exempt from it. No one was. The difference, she thought, was knowing when you were doing it and knowing, always, that you were doing it to someone. 2 days later, back in Ottawa, she sent a single email to the Thierry Group's operations director. It was 7 lines long. It outlined a new guest experience audit framework she wanted implemented across all managed properties, starting with the Alderton. It described, briefly, a methodology based on what she was calling the unremarkable guest standard. The idea that service quality should be evaluated not at its best but at its most ordinary, with the guest who carries their own bag and wears their coat from 4 winters ago and asks simply for their tea. The operations director replied within the hour. He said it was a good framework. She replied, It's not a framework, it's a baseline. We should have had it years ago. 3 weeks after that, Timothy at the front desk of the Alderton received a commendation letter for completing a new service training program. He didn't know who had designed it. Dale from the Crestwood restaurant was enrolled in the same program. He completed it in 2 sessions and reportedly told his staff afterward that the first table you seat tells everyone in the room what kind of place you're running. Neither of them ever learned that the woman in the burgundy wool coat was the reason the program existed. Vera hadn't seen the need to tell them. Some things land better when they arrive without attribution. When they feel, to the person receiving them, less like consequence and more like clarity. That, she had always believed, was the difference between punishment and change. If this story made you think about how quickly we decide what someone is worth, about all the Owens and Veras walking through lobbies every single day without the power to ground a fleet or redesign a training program, then take a second and let us know in the comments. Would the hotel have changed anything if Vera hadn't held a management contract? That's the question worth sitting with. If you believe everyone who walks through that door deserves the same first look, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if stories like this one are the kind that stay with you, the kind about dignity, about the quiet power of people who have learned not to raise their voice, then you know where to find more of them. We'll be here. Come back.